All right. So once you have printed out your PDF forms and taped them together, know where the scoop is of the neck is going to be where your front is, and I have made a mark on that pattern. If there you have a sheet that you're using and you can place on a fold, great. But if you can't, put it up close to the selvage. Know that when you do that, you don't want that selvage to show. So I just put it in just inside of that selvage because I'm going to make a seam right there. Now, if you don't have a serger, you will have to take and use just a regular straight stitch, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I try to make these and pump them out as fast as I can, so I do use my serger except for a couple of parts. So. And because I am using the serger, I'm not even going to cut that front part of the seam. I'll just serge that right off. It'll cut it for me. So then what you have left is a piece right here. Now this is a directional fabric that I did take and flip, so it's not that big of a deal. If you feel like you want to do that, that's fine. They don't care. And the sleeve is going to have two seams, one underneath and one on top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark this. I've got a little spot here, an X on it. This is going to be the underarm of the sleeve. If you're going to be putting elastic in the cuff, you're going to have to cut it longer, and it shows that on your pattern. I'm using ribbing. It's something I have, so I'm using it. If your material doesn't have any direction, which is good because you can really utilize your material, you can flip this and bring it right down in here. You know, as far as you can get, and then you have whatever's left here. All right, and you are going to use 3 yards, 3 1/3 yards, I believe, is what you're going to need. Let me check that. Okay, so it's going to take 3 1/3 yards to make one gown. And I have got a graphed paper of what I used. I had it, so that's what I used for my pattern. And what I'm going to do then is I'm going to save this, and this is going to go to my students. I have students who are wanting to make masks, so I'm putting kits together for them. So you can see that I didn't trim this now, so I'm going to just take my seam inside of this. If you are doing straight stitching, go ahead and do your straight stitching, and then press that open. Okay. So I'm just going to finish up. And And then the next thing I have to do is I need to take and put my sleeves together, and I'm going to make a seam on the underside of the arm, not the top, but the underside. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to open this sleeve up like that. Open up my garment so I can find the sleeve opening. You can see that, and you can see where there's a spot right there. That's the low spot. That's where I'm going to put the seam of my sleeve, and I'm going to pin this. And the good thing is that this doesn't need to be real accurate. It should be oversized for the protection purposes. I would say one size fits most. I'm not going to say it fits all. Ours are going to go to the local nursing home. That's what I'm making for. So if you are making, make sure that you are calling ahead and letting them know you've got, and find out if they need. If they don't need, call the next group. See who needs these, because they're running out of the supplies in the hospitals and nursing homes. All right, so now it's all pinned. I'm going to go ahead and serge this. Once that's done, you are going to take and fold that sleeve and match up your shoulder seams. And when you match up your shoulder seams, you're going to have a seam that comes from your neck all the way down the top of that sleeve. It's just a little different of putting things in, and it's working pretty darn good. So I just match up my seam. And I'm going straight down. And because it's a straight seam, I'm not going to have to do much pinning here. All right, so you can see that I've done all of the sleeves and put them together. I'm going to flip this so you can see it. You can see how that seam goes down the top of the shoulder. All right, so now what we have to do is we have to do a finished edge along the back. So what we're going to do is, now you can press this if you want to. You do not have to. Sometimes it's just a matter of getting it started. You're going to turn it a quarter of a turn, then you're going to turn it again. And then you're just going to straight stitch this.
Keep going.
So now what we're going to do is we're going to find the center front where that seam is, or if you're on a fold, you're going to still find the center front. We're using the extra wide bias tape, so you can see that, all right? And I've cut this first piece to 60 inches. And I'm just going to find the center of it. Threads I gotta trim here. And I do pin this because I don't want it to sneak off on me. We want to make sure that that's way up in there. So you can see that it's all up in there. So now once I've got one side of it done, I'm feeling pretty positive. And what I do is I actually start on this side. And I'm going to zigzag this. That way it's for sure it's going to catch, and I'm going to back stitch because that's where all of the stress is going to be. To the end, and then I'm going to switch it back to straight stitching. And I'm going to back stitch, reinforce that, and then I'm going to change it back to straight stitch. Get to the end, I'm going to turn that under. It's just a little bit easier. Take a pin, slide that up in there. Then I go back to the other side and I finish that side up from the straight stitching as well. Turn this in, get your pin, stick it up in there. And the bias tape is on. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to be using ribbing on the sleeves, and this is 5.5 inches tall, 9 inches wide. I'm going to put those together, and I'm going to stitch a seam. Once that seam is done, I'm going to take and put wrong sides together, and I just fold it in half like a donut. And then I want this seam to be on the underside of the sleeve. So here is the underside of my sleeve. You can see that seam. And I'm going to match these seams up. And hopefully my serger is going to work really nice for me now. It hasn't been always, so we'll see. I'm going to try not to pin too much here, just to stabilize it. Okay, and I'm going to put that in. Right there. That's where I have some issues. So I just stop it and I get back in and start it in again. Okay, so you can see what that looks like. And when it's all done, there's your sleeve. Okay, so the ties are next. And what I have done is there's going to be a little bit left on the card of your bias tape. So just take whatever's left. It'll be one strand. And then I cut this in two equal amounts, not a big deal. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to take and measure down 18 inches. From the top, and that's plenty. So there's my 18-inch mark. I'll put a pin in, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in from the back side, and I'm going to stabilize that. I'm going to stitch right here, and then I'm going to bring it back, and I'm going to stitch over top of it again, and even maybe make a square with an X in the center if it's not too thick. So that just stabilizes it so that it's not going to go anywhere. So that's what I'm going to start out with right now. And I'm on the back side of the garment. So once that's done, stabilized in that way, so now I'm going to come back over top. And you can see I've got the box, all right? So trim up my threads. And that's going to really stabilize it. But I still have a loose spot here. This is still open. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come back in, and I'm going to stitch right along that bottom. again, you're going to want to open this and turn it in.